back, ladies. Back to our last podcast of this year.
Yeah.
Very exciting because we want to talk about life be lifing. Like it's ending the year. Where are we? How are we feeling? Lots of emotions happening. So I actually had a question for you guys. We always start the year with setting intentions, setting goals, and by the end of the year, maybe we finished them, maybe we didn't. But just recently, someone said to me, I had a dream, and my dream was just a dream. Like I was meant to have the dream, but it's not on me to figure out how to get there. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, it's the universe's way of telling me and showing me how to get to that dream. And I was like,
Mm,
whoa, that's real surrender right there. And so
mm.
my question is, how do you surrender to letting the universe or God like guide you to these goals? Because now at the end of the year, you're like, well, what happened? You're recapping. So how do you surrender to all that?
Oh, that's a great question. And I actually just had an IG live kind of going into that. Um, a lot of us, we tend to plan. I think it's just by nature that a lot of us want to plan out our lives. We want to plan out how we get to a certain outcome. We plan out our timelines, everything, right? Because there's this sense of security and achievement that comes from that when we do those things. But what I've recently learned is that sometimes your timeline does not matter. God, universe, whoever you believe in, right? Those divine, support, support systems that we have around us, again, however you resonate, they have something better for you. And I think that comes from stillness, most importantly. When you're able to be in a space of stillness where you're able to receive these downloads, you get to see the endless possibilities. And the reason why I say this is because I can take myself back to a specific moment in my life where I was really upset that the timeline was not working out for me in regards to love, in regards to my career, in regards to where I was at in that time and space. And that was back in 2021, actually. And it was actually one of my most transformative years ever. I remember being in the sala, like in the living room, doing my morning routine, waking up. I lived in this beautiful apartment where I had a lot of beautiful lighting, and I used to sit there and meditate with light music in the background. And I just remember sitting there as I was listening to music and just hearing this nudge telling me, is this it? Is this all that we have worked so hard for? And why are we not fulfilled? You followed every roadmap possible. You did everything that everybody told you to do. And yet, this isn't it. And as I kept sitting with that feeling, because it was very uncomfortable, I then got another whisper that came through and said, you have to let go of the plan. You have to release it. And I was really scared in the moment because I was like, I have to release my plan. The plan is all I've known, and the timeline is all I've known. And I thought I was going to get there. But then another little nudge came through and it said, but did that work though? And how do you really feel about that? And I was more anxious than ever. I wanted to control everything, and it was just not working. And so I felt this other nudge to just book a trip to go to the Grand Canyon. And that's exactly what I did. I became spontaneous. I booked that trip. It was in February of 2021, and it was cold. There was snow. There was all the things, and I didn't plan anything. But I remember going with a friend, and this friend took a picture of me, and I'm literally on the edge of the Grand Canyon watching the whole entire landscape. As the sun is setting down, as I'm receiving that beautiful sun like beaming on my skin and just being like, wow. I looked over that whole entire horizon and I thought to myself, that's what that whisper meant. Let go of the plan, because the moment I let go of the plan, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Grand Canyon, but it is limitless. There's so many different possibilities. And that's what I felt. And I think that that's why when we're giving these visions and we're giving these dreams of what we're meant to do, sometimes we put ourselves in a box, or even better yet, in a cage where our wings can only fly to a certain amount of space. But think about it. When you release the bird from the cage, it becomes expansive. And our dreams are meant to become expansive. So, how do we get there? I invite you to be still. I invite you to let the nudges, the whispers tell you and guide you to where you need to go. Because the more that you listen to that, the more you open up possibilities, the more you'll see more doors open, the more you'll see your life transform. And the timeline, the way you thought life was supposed to go, turns out to be way better. But it's following the vision, following the whispers, taking intentional action. Because imagine if I was in my living room back in 2021 and I received these downloads and I ignored it, would I be where I'm at today? I would not. I would still be in teaching. I would still be unfulfilled. And I think I still would have been lost. But because I chose to hear the nudges and trust the nudges, or
Mhm.
trust the visions that are placed in me, which, fast forward, led to knowing that I was meant to be in coaching. I left my career that I worked so hard for. I pivoted to many different careers, and I'm still trusting the process. And I truly do believe that this highest power that we have, God, universe, life, however you want to define that, is this divine support that is supporting us along the way. And just because we can't see it does not mean it's not there.
Mhm.
We can feel it. But how do we feel it? In a place of stillness.
Mhm.
And God, I know that, I will refer to God because God to me is, someone that I go to and lean on. But in that time, you guys, I wasn't leaning on God. I was leaning on my universe and ancestors and creator. I named it differently because of where my faith was back in that time. But now, I truly do believe that God develops a greater plan for you, but only if you're ready to receive it. And in order to receive that, you have to be in a place of stillness.
Yeah.
And sometimes for a lot of us, we receive downloads in dreams because when we're awake, we're distracted by the noise.
Mhm.
We're distracted 100%. So God, universe tries to speak to you in many ways. And for some of us too, when we're awake, have you ever noticed that when you're asking God, universe, or life being like, can you please give me a sign? Can you give me a sign? And then the sign comes. But how many of us choose to ignore it? So many of us.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
moment that you allow yourself to receive those messages, receive the downloads, receive the dreams, receive the vision, and that you trust it, most importantly, you trust that it is given for you for a reason, and you do the intentional work around that, everything works out. But you have to believe, you have to trust. You have to trust that the vision was placed in you because you were meant to execute that purpose.
Mhm.
But that's a lot of, again, it requires stillness. And I think that also requires a lot of faith, faith in the unknown, faith in the journey, faith in yourself. And that takes time to develop. I'm not saying that you're going to get this overnight. You're going to have to develop these skills because in 2021, that's something that I did. Because after that Grand Canyon trip, I went on more solo dates. I learned to love myself more. I was becoming more intentional with how I was going to get out of my career. I started prioritizing me instead of my career because I was doing that a lot. And I was living more presently. And I started slowly seeing the power of intention and how much more I was feeling fulfilled. Yeah, I used to have dreams that I was going to be a coach. I had a dream that I would help people. I just didn't know how. And fast
Mhm.
forward, I'm doing that today. And I know that life keeps unfolding and showing me other ways and redirecting me when I'm going off alignment. But it's our job to believe and to be able to receive. And again, that goes through stillness and trusting your journey, which means having faith.
Yeah, seriously.
Mic
Drop
drop.
mic.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that was so
That's
good. I feel like we need, like, a moment of silence for that, right? Like, that like, take that in. If you're listening or watching this, just like take that in. That was so good. So good. And if you haven't watched Edie's live from yesterday, please go watch that because that was also really good. And I think one of the things that you mentioned in the live that you didn't mention now was that stillness doesn't always have to be like still
Mhm.
without moving, right? Stillness can be just like sitting, being present, right, with
Yeah.
yourself and not being distracted with all of the other noise, right? Like background noise, TV, things like, right? Like you can just be with yourself. So I think that's also important to acknowledge because I think that some people are like, well, I can't be still. How do I sit with stillness? And it doesn't have to be like complete frozenness. It can be gentle softness where it's like,
Mhm.
I'm just being here with myself in the present moment.
A
The
1000%.
the other thing that I want to say, that I love that you said at the beginning was the timeline doesn't matter,
Mhm.
right? And I love that piece because I always me and Marcin talk about this a lot, like, time isn't real.
Yeah.
Timelines aren't real. Time is a social construct. It's not real, and right, like, it's real in the sense of, like, yeah, we humans created time so that we can kind of be more organized or, like, meet deadlines or, like, different
Mhm.
we use time in a variety of ways, but it's not real. Right? And so when we can just release that and say like, "Oh, yeah, like another year has gone by, but like time isn't actually real." It's okay, right? It's trusting the process. It's trusting that you're going to meet your goals whenever you get there, right? It doesn't have to be when other people say you have to get there, right? And I'm even thinking about like not just meeting your goals like in at work, but it's also like getting
Even
married,
in
having
relationships.
kids, right?
Mhm.
Exactly. All of those things, buying a house, all of these things, like it's not though like people put that pressure on us, right? Society puts that pressure on you, but it's not actually real. And so going back to Edie's was saying, it's really having faith of the unknown, trusting yourself, trusting God, the universe. And oh my gosh, I love talking about the universe because I'm like, there's this really good book called The Secret Language of the Universe. Oh, it's so good, and I'm, like, a super skeptical person, and I think, like, I grew up Catholic, and then I then kind of, like, started dipping my toes into, like, spirituality, and I was like, meh, I don't know if this is real or not." Read that book, mind blown, and I was like, "No, there is another side, and there is something out there," and I actually started practicing, what the book was talking about in terms of, like, asking for signs, and it is beautiful because I think, like, what you were saying, Edie's, was we are so distracted with life and other things that we actually don't see the signs, but when we start to be more intentional and start to pay attention to what's actually happening, you actually do start to see the signs. And I feel like ever since reading that book and actually being more intentional about how I live in this universe, right? I do see more and more signs, which is actually really, really
Mhm.
cool and fascinating. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's called The Secret Language of the Universe if you're interested and if you want to start like dipping your toes into learning more about like the universe. And in that book she also talks about like the different terms, right? Like you can use God, you can use the universe, you can use
Yeah.
whatever you feel comfortable. It doesn't have to be the universe. You can say God, you can say whatever feels right for you. But yeah, oh,
Mhm.
everything you dropped was just like so like, mic drop, mic drop, mic drop.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm glad that it
100%.
I'm glad that it served you guys, and again, like, it's just part of my journey, right? And so, I just hope that you take this, like, secret part of the recipe. I think about that movie, like, Agua para chocolate, like water for chocolate. For those of you who have not read the book, it talks about the little secrets that sometimes like, the ingredients in life, and this is part of the ingredient, right? If you choose to take it, and want to apply this in your life so you can have a little bit more flavor, more sazon, you're going to see way more impact. And like you said, Tati, you become way more aware. And when you do become more aware of all the signs that are out there, and when you choose to receive it again, please, I'm telling you, receive these, because it's so many of us, we see it and we ignore it. So see it, receive it, and ask yourself what these signs or what God, universe, life is trying to tell you, right? Take that into consideration, because I think a lot of us, again, like I'm going to emphasize, and I feel it in my spirit, where it's like we ignore this so much. And I think a lot of us, we ignore this because we don't believe enough in ourselves. And again, I'm going to reiterate that it's important for you to know that if this vision, this dream, this urge of you feeling that you need to step into this purpose and you have no idea how you're going to get there, don't worry about how to get there, but just take intentional action. Trust that you are assigned to this assignment where you are going to be able to support whoever it is that you need to support, open the business, be the first in your family to go to school, be the first person to marry someone that actually loves you, and that you break the cycles in your family. You got to trust that, because again, life communicates so much to us, but it's our job to be able to receive it and use that information and apply it so we can start living towards that dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because I watched the movie last night. I don't know if you guys have seen, can't remember the movie right now, but once I remember, I'll put it out there. But in this movie, they talked about how it was one of those cheesy Hallmark movies, guys. It was the Christmas movie, I'm not
You
gonna
love
lie.
those.
But I really liked the analogy of what they gave, because this woman in the movie was having a hard time believing in her own dreams, even though she was amazing and talented and artistic. And she felt that she couldn't live up to the legacy that her mom left behind, because they were left a store and, they were trying to buy the artisan work that they were doing. And her daughter gifted her a gift that she cherished very much, because her mom wrote her this letter and said that birds don't rely on the branch or fear that the branch is going to break. Why? Because they have their wings. And
Oof.
when you learn to expand those wings, you don't worry about anything else. You trust that your wings will carry you forward. And that is the same thing that I want to remind you today, that it's the same with your dreams. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that part, because that one, I remember when I heard that, because I'm also having a hard time sometimes believing in myself. And when I heard that little quote, I was just like, I'm taking that with me, because a lot of us, we fear the branch, but we forget we have our wings.
Mm.
So I hope this helps somebody.
Lupe, I want to hear,
It
yeah, what's happening
definitely
on
helped
your end?
me
Yeah.
because for those of you not watching, I am sobbing over here.
Yeah.
I'm sobbing because that was a great reminder. It brought me back to my transformation journey too. And everything you explained, I've gone through. And I guess the tears are because I'm mourning the fact that I didn't do that this year. And
Mm.
I guess I'm upset. I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't continue to listen to the signs, that I haven't been as strong to believe in the universe and God, right? Because once upon a time I did have all this, but I guess I lost it. And hearing you describe that transformation, like it brought me back to mine. And that feeling is so amazing. That's why I'm part of this group, because I know what transformation is like, right? And it's a beautiful thing, but it's hard when you forget it.
Mm.
And now you're like, I used to be there. What happened? And so now you're stuck in this loop of like, where did I mess up? Why am I not consistent? Where do I even begin again? Where do I restart? Um, so the intention of this episode was also for Edie's to coach me, but I honestly like that's everything I needed to hear. I'm sure there's more. I think for me, it's more of like how, that restart thing. Because for anyone out there who's like, who also just got stirred up and reminded of like, damn, you're right. That's what I used to do, or that's how I used to be. But I'm not. How do I get back on track? You know, we've done it. It's almost like I always think about the people who like, or myself, who get on a health journey and then you fall off because holidays came along or something happened and you want to restart. So for me, it's like, how do I restart? Even though I've done it before, but now I'm in a different chapter of my life. So how do I apply? Like, for example, my belief before was living in the city, working my 9 to 5. On my lunch break, I would go to church. And that was my ritual. And that's how I got the downloads. That's how I was faithful. Here, I'm not in the city. I'm not in a 9 to 5. It's different, right? So now the same application doesn't work, right? So now it's readjusting and refining what does work. And so I think that's where I get lost. And that's where I get hard on myself of like, how come you haven't figured it out? How come you haven't found your way back? And I guess that's where I would love to hear what you have to say, Edie, in terms of how do I get back? Because it's so hard to like not feel disappointed in yourself.
I hear you, and I felt that because whether you know this or not, I just went through that. Like, all the feelings that you're mentioning, I resonate so much with and so deeply, and same with our audience, because I literally just went through that. I was questioning everything. I felt disappointed. And Lupe, the question around that is such a deep one because a lot of us sometimes we do get lost in the midst of things, even when we are doing what we're supposed to. Whether you feel like you're not doing it or you are doing it, I want to remind you that this is, again, I'm going to go back to stillness because there's power to stillness and there's power to taking that step back because when those feelings arise, I want you to hug those emotions. I want you to accept what's coming up because a lot of us, we guilt ourselves. We talk badly to ourselves. Estamos regañándonos, like we're
Mhm.
telling like we're scolding at ourselves. And that does not serve us. If anything, that puts us into this darker hole where kind of like the ostrich where he puts his head in the ground. That's the analogy that I kept feeling from myself. And I feel that for you too. And the thing is, accept that the emotions are there, but they're guiding you for a reason.
Mm.
They're coming up because they're telling you, Lupe, we're still meant to do the things that in our heart, we know we're meant to do. And this is where stillness comes in because sometimes we need to be grounded. That's the power of stillness is to ground yourself. And again, it does not mean sitting there and meditating and going, oh, like, that's not it. Like, if you guys saw how I do stillness, it's completely different from what you see outside. Like, I go on a walk, I listen to my favorite music, like my soul filling music, where if I need to cry, I will cry it out. I listen to my ancestral indigenous music where I let my ancestors guide me. I let it all happen in that moment. But when I mean block the noise, I mean block the noise from what you go on social media with, because when you go on there, what do we naturally want to do?
Compare.
Compare. We want to compare. And that also does not serve us.
Mhm.
Then sometimes we go to advice, but sometimes we go to family and it's unsolicited advice, or sometimes we have other people who mean so well and mean to encourage us, and yet we still feel like, but I still don't feel it. And guess who is the only person that can give you what you need? It's you, and it is your highest power who is divinely guiding you. That inner whisper that comes out. And I think that's a lot of what I do with my work is, yes, we're released, but we follow our intuition, or that, the voice and the whisper that our spirit or highest power gives us, because we forget that that person is also guiding us, or that thing is guiding us to going back into the direction that we need to go into, and reminding you on how powerful you are. I think about so many leaders in this world that felt so unqualified to do the things that they did. and they did it. I can think about so many people, but I'm going to come up with the example that's coming in my spirit, and it's Moses. It's very biblical, but I'm going to go with Moses. Moses did not feel qualified. Moses was afraid to go back to his land and do the things that God was telling him to do. He was legit scared. And God reminded him in that moment of stillness when he spoke to him that he was more than qualified and that he was not alone. And I want to remind you that because I think a lot of us, we forget that we're not alone. We have this energy, this higher power that's legit guiding you. And I think about Pocahontas too, for those of you who are not religious or, in that sense, spiritual. But it's like Pocahontas, when she's talking to the, Mother Willow, the tree, what
Mhm.
does she do? The wind guides her to where she needs to go and start going back to her people. And she gets this strength and energy to go conquer her assignment. She doesn't stop. Right. And again, that's a Disney movie, and I don't care, if you need to go into that level, but that's what life is all about, though. Is like go back to that moment of stillness. Accept that the feelings are coming up and telling you that maybe, Lupe, you didn't do enough. But is it true, though? No, it's not true. The assignment looks different this year because you live a different life. You are no longer in the past. You are no longer that person that was living in the city and had that ritual. Maybe what you just said right now is the answer. Maybe you need to come up with a new ritual, a new routine, a new rhythm, a new harmony cycle that allows you to then move forward with your purpose, to move forward with your assignment, to remind yourself, most importantly, of who you are at your core. And that's why stillness is also important, because we get lost with the noise of what people tell us who we need to become. What if you use stillness to allow yourself to realign and let those voices, the intuition, the spirit to guide you and remind you on who you are and who you are in this season? Because you are no longer Lupe from back then. But can we channel that energy that
Yeah.
younger Lupe had? Of course. And that's
Yeah.
something that I did, because aunque no lo creas, and I'm going to share this very vulnerably, like during the 4 days that I did of no social media break, I also felt that. I was like, where am I? Like, what am I doing? I didn't do all the things that I wanted to do. And I talked to myself so nasty, and I was scolding myself of why I wasn't meeting this place. Why didn't I scale my business the way I wanted to? How come so-and-so has more success than I do? Oh my God, the list goes on and on and on. And that's when I felt the pull and the nudge that it was like, hey, you need to break up with social media for a little bit. I don't want you to post anything and telling people about why you're doing it. You're just going to do it. And I felt so many times in nudges of where I wanted to go on there. And I was like, oh, I just want to go. I want to just see. But then I noticed throughout those times that that was just a distraction, because my brain naturally wanted to go back to reassure me and be like, see, you didn't do it. Like, see, you need to work harder. See, and that wasn't serving me. So I accepted the feelings of, okay, I do feel anxious. I want to control things again, but this is not serving me. And so then I decided to dedicate time to look at all of my pictures, to look at all the courses that I once did, to look back at my journal. Like this thing, oh my gosh, and it dropped. Sorry, the background noise of my pen. But I went back to this journal. I went back to a letter. I went back to all the things that I had. And I kid you not, Lupe, when I was playing a particular song, it's called Overflow, and I'll share that in the in the notes, so you guys can go into that if you wish to hear it. But when I heard that song, I got this nudge, and it said, Iris, I want you to go back to your voice notes, and there's one for February. And I went back, and sure enough, there was a voice note that I left in my phone that was in February of 2021, before I went to the Grand Canyon.
Mm.
And I heard the message that my younger self left me, and that gave me strength. And again, back in that time, I was more spiritual. And just to hear that version of me speak in such high spirit, and she was lost. She felt exactly how I felt, but she guided me and gave me the answer that I needed. And so then after I heard that whole entire thing, I got another nudge and said, I want you to look at the picture of all of the pictures that you took in the Grand Canyon, and you will know which one I want you to just sit with. And it was that picture that I mentioned earlier, where I was sitting and looking outside of the landscape and the horizon of the Grand Canyon. And I remembered the feeling. Yeah, all to this to remind you that sometimes we may feel lost. We may feel like we have not done enough, but take time to be still. Take time to let God, your higher self, even your past version of you, even
Mm-hmm.
to remind you on the power that you hold within yourself, and allow it to guide you and realign you so that way you walk with more intentionality, with more strength, with more courage, with the season that you're currently in. So that was a lot, but I'm going to recap the tools. Take time to be still. And I hear some of you all saying, but I don't got time, Edie's. The holidays
Mm.
are right here. Well, let me lovingly call you out and the love. You got time. You're just choosing not to make time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You make time for the whole world. So why not make time for you? Whether it's 30 seconds laying in your bed, whether it's 5 minutes to go on a walk, whatever it is, to stretch your body, but make the time to be still. Make the time to connect with that higher power, with yourself, with your body, and journal. Go back to all the things that you did this year and remind yourself. Look for the evidence of not what you have not done, but what you have done, and how
Mm-hmm.
God, universe, life has showed up for you in this year. And I promise you, you are going to be more surprised than anything, because you're going to be like, dang, I actually did do a lot. Dang, I was very blessed this year. Dang, I did take intentional steps, even if they were baby steps, but I took the steps to get to where I want to go. Or you know what? Maybe this year I needed to slow down because I needed to realign and find myself again. Maybe this year you needed to rest more, and that's enough. And then create the goals that you want moving forward. And again, I'm not saying start your goals in 2025, but start intentionally taking action on the goals that you want to start taking action on today. Why wait for tomorrow? But again, in order to get to that spot of taking action and achieving all the things you want to achieve, take time to be still, slow down.
Mm-hmm.
So allow yourself to be guided by this higher power. And I promise you, you will find the answers that you seek for.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I think for anyone that's also feeling like me out there, I hope this resonates with you because it definitely did with me. Um, I immediately now know like my mind is working. It's like, okay, you can do 10 minutes in the morning, or you can extend that little ritual you were doing, you know? So it's a matter of taking that action now. Um, and for those of you who can also resonate with, I used to be like that, but I'm not anymore. I love what you said, channel that younger energy and apply it to this chapter of your life. We're constantly evolving. That's what transformation means. So, of course, what worked 2 years ago, 3 years ago might not work this time, but you can definitely channel that. Have faith in that you've done it before and apply it into the new chapter that you have now. And so, just like me, it's easy to forget it. But that's what we're here for. We're not perfect because clearly I'm also like struggling. And that's why we created this, because I know we all know what a struggle is. But just because you get through a struggle doesn't mean you're not going to have it again, clearly. And so I think I hear you. Thank you for reminding me to allow that space to feel whatever it is I'm feeling, but also coming out of it, reminding myself that it is possible and that I will get through this as well. Also, I love what Tati said, or what Marson said, that there is time doesn't exist. Like, your learnings come when they need to come. And for me right now, like, this whole year I've struggled. And now, the last few days of the year, I'm reminded of this. And I love that for me because now I can really sit down and review everything I have done correctly. Because it's so easy to get caught up on all the things that I haven't checked off, right? But what about the good stuff? Like the good times, the good accomplishments, because there definitely was. Um, but we get so caught up on our to-do list instead of like the path that we were given specifically for this year. Um, so I hope that this was helpful for people out there. It definitely was for me. Feeling a little ready to go. But yeah, thank you for that, Iris. Your words are very encouraging and very motivational in terms of like, dang, I can do it. Like it makes me want to action.
That's a great recap. So now I'm going to ask you, what is that actionable step that you're going to take? That intentional step to, because again, I dropped a lot of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
I gave some nuggets on what you can apply. So what will you apply today now that you have this information?
I have a whole list, but we also can get caught up. I'm gonna do it all. No,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
no.
pick one thing.
Good.
And right now I'm gonna say sit with my emotions because clearly I'm emotional. And if Tati's taught me anything, it's to release. And it's okay to release because when you release, you're able to welcome whatever is next, right? And then after that, I think it's definitely the going back to my journals too of like that time where I was going through that transformation. I definitely recorded everything that was happening. And so I want to go back to that and remind myself of that because it's true. It's like my old self did it. So
Mm.
I know I'm capable. And that's all I need to hear. Because it doesn't have to mean that, oh, but she did it back then, I can't do it now. No, no, no. That's a vivid example of you did it before, you're gonna do it again. How? Again, it goes back to how we started this conversation. Sometimes we're not meant to know how. Just be with yourself, like you said, be still and understand that you're trying to get to like this place of I got this. How am I gonna get there? I don't know yet, but that's okay. Maybe that's not for me to figure out at this moment. But for today, I'm going to sit with where I'm at and just read of what I've been able to accomplish. That goes for this year, and that goes for what I've done in the past.
I love that. That's really good. And I think that is beautiful because, again, you mentioned something that's important, and I want to just emphasize on that is the capacity. You don't have to do it all.
Mhm.
Understand where you're at right now. Understand what's within your capacity. What is realistic as of right now? Because we want to do it all. And sometimes we just can't do it all. Sometimes it requires us to go back to the basics, to release our emotions, to accept the feelings that come up, and trust your intuition as you're being guided through going into these journals. And again,
Mhm.
that takes time. You're not going to get it perfect. And I promise you too, like even for those of us who feel more confident or more courageous maybe in this area, there will be times where you go backwards and you have to practice this again and again. So I love that you mentioned that, to just check in with your capacity and what is realistic
Mhm.
to do right now. And you're not required to know all of the answers. This is part of trusting the journey. Um, it's about surrendering at that very moment when you're ready, because surrender means to trust your process. It means to yield. It means to just, whatever you cannot carry, just give it away.
Mhm.
Give it away.
Mhm.
So when you're ready for that step, allow that to be the next thing that you do. But I love that you recapped on capacity. That's important. And you got this, Lupe.
Thanks. I know. Sometimes it's just helpful to hear it, right? So,
I'll say one last thing and to end this episode. I also think that we put all of this pressure on ourselves and we don't have to take life so seriously. We've talked about this before, but we're all going to die one day. And this is something that I think about all of the time. It's actually, I don't, I like dark humor. So if this isn't funny to you, I'm sorry. But there's a death calendar, and I actually want to buy a death calendar. And you cross off the days of like, all right, this is how much time I have left to live. And I actually love that because it actually, for me, I feel like it would help me just be like a little reminder of like, oh shit, I'm going to die soon. I think that that's something that really helps me just not take life so seriously. And even when things get rough, right? Of course, we're all going to struggle. We're all going to have those really low lows, those really high highs. But I also think that looking at the bigger picture always and going back to that bigger picture of like, we don't have to try to do all of the things like we have been talking about, right? Like, we don't have to do it all. All of this pressure that we're putting on ourselves, or all of the pressure that other people are putting on ourselves, it's not real, right? And I think for me personally, that helps me soften a little bit, right? Of like, oh yeah, none of this is actually real, right?
mhm.
We're all going to die one day, and I think that if we can just do our best always and live moment to moment, day by day, I think we can give ourselves a little bit more grace and a little bit more compassion, right? Because we're not taking life so seriously. We're not, we are talking a lot about like surrendering, right? I always go back to like that grip of like, we don't have to hold on so hard. We can soften and we can just
Mhm.
take our lives day by day. So I hope that is helpful for some. And I'm sorry if the dark humor is not your thing.
Interesting. I didn't know they had calendars like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. I've seen those. But also for those of you who are like, can I get another like activity that I can go into? Because yeah, they do have those. And don't worry, I like dark humor. So, um, but I did a really amazing exercise last year at a conference. And you can grab a ruler, like those long, like tape rulers. And what it asked was, I want you to cut off, that number on that ruler where your current age is. So I did. At the time I was what? I'm 32 right now. I'm 30. I was 31 then. So I cut that piece. And then they asked the average life of your grandparents, like your grandmothers specifically, because we're women. And I put like maybe around 88 because I have my great grandma who's still alive, Dios mío. But but I cut 88 and I saw the time that I had left potentially. And it has been a huge shift in my life because now this year I cut off that other piece. And it shows how valuable our life really is. And how, again, this is not to scare because I know we say that time does not exist, but it just gives you a perspective of the time that we have on this earth. And not to say that again, don't go back on the timeline and freak out and say, oh my gosh, pero Iris, then I only have X amount of years to live. No, that's not the point. It's to see I still have time.
Mhm.
I can still do the things. And that's why the stillness is so important too, because when you go into stillness, you allow your intuition to speak to you or that higher power. And when you do that, and when you're ready to release the emotions, that's part of the surrender. And when you surrender and trust the process, you evolve. And when you look at that timeline, you still got time,
Mhm.
but it's the intentionality that goes within that time. So what do you choose to prioritize during the time that like if you're marking it down on a death calendar or you see that ruler, or even then, I want you to picture yourself at 80 years old and your grandbaby's running up to you and saying, oh, abuelita, grandma, did you do it all? If you say no right now, that's okay. It just means, guess what? It's time to live intentionally now.
Mm.
It's time to take up space in that time to do the things that really matter. Let this frustration, anger, and sadness and whatever not so great feelings coming up remind you of that it's talking to you to say, hey, it's time to wake up. It's time to rebuild our routine. It's time to live more intentionally. It's time for us to just let go of the plan and not take life so seriously. We're still going to make it. And let me tell you, friend, you still made it though. You're here. You're listening to this podcast. You survived another year. You have gone through the family stuff. You are conquering trauma. You are here, my friend. You are still evolving. You are transforming. So I want to remind you that in case you did not know, maybe you don't have a journal and you don't log in, you're like, I don't have anything. Well, that's your evidence. You are still here. You're still
I love
breathing. And so we hope that these tools support you, because at the end I dropped so many gems right now. And I like the dark humor. So I thought that was great.
Anytime I think of dark humor, I think of El Chacal from Sábado
Oh my
Gigante.
God.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. Because he said it how it was. Like, dude, your voice was not it.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. No, but that was
Yeah.
good, because I know that so many people will resonate with that, resonate with you, Lupe. And, hopefully you can take some of the tips that we've also provided in this episode so you can remind yourself that you still got time. You still got time. You still got time. And you will live intentionally, friend. That is my intentions and my prayer for our listeners, and even for us in this group, is that let God, universe, life remind you that you still got time, that you're still able to do all of the things that God, universe, life has placed in you. Those visions are there for a reason. Your dreams speak to you. Life speaks to you for a reason. It just requires us to make time, to hear our intuition, to trust our journey, and to just surrender what no longer serves us so we can open up the possibilities and open the doors that we know that are there. So those are my intentions for you. And I know you got this moving forward.
I love that. And you know what? I feel like even the person listening to this podcast right now in this very moment, we already know that you're living intentionally to some level, because you're listening to us right now, right? Right now in this moment, we know that you're doing something right because you're here with us, trying to grow, trying to evolve. So that is good enough. You're
Yes.
already here.
Yep.
1000%. Oh my gosh.
Amen.
And
Snap,
no,
snap.
I
Ooh.
know this was all so good. And now, ladies, we will be wrapping up our episode. But before we let you guys go, we hope that this encourages you, inspires you, it transforms you, and that you take that intentional action that you need at this time. And remember, check in with your capacity, and just remember you still got time. But I'm going to hand this over now to our lovely ladies.
You need accountability. I'm your girl because I'm going through the same thing. So I'm promising here that I am going to action, right? And if you want to connect, if you want to, even like, oh my God, I feel the same way, I'm more than happy to also hop on a call and talk things out. I love doing that.
And also, ladies, if you found any of these tools helpful and you're like, yo, I need Edie to be my coach, girl, coach me for 2025. I got you. Go ahead and go to my Instagram. You can find me at intentionally_Iris and book a call with me so we can see how we can work together for the new year and get you just living more intentionally, trusting yourself, and surrendering, most importantly. Trust your journey. So I got you, girl.
And if you're looking to heal your trauma and reset your nervous system, come hang out with me on Instagram. I'm at tatiana.holistic.coach. And I also have a free nervous system guide that you can download where I show you exactly what you need to do to heal your nervous system.
And I'm at Healthy Lupe, so shoot me a DM and I'm always open to making new friends.
Awesome, ladies. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, stay lit and Oh my gosh, enjoy your holidays, y'all. We'll see you guys in
In the new year.
2025.
Yes.
Woo!
Thank you for joining us today on Lit Podcast. We hope this conversation has ignited a spark within you so that you keep embracing your journey.
Remember, transformation takes time, but every step brings you closer to the life you're meant to live. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and leave a review.
Let's continue this journey together. Until next time, stay lit and keep transforming.